She started as a princess, but has now become the queen of Hollywood. Elegant, captivating, and ambitious, the lovely brunette has shown the extent of her talent throughout a wide variety of roles.
She's brilliant, really, really brilliant.
Never shying away from a new challenge, her talent always blows the audience away.
She's like the real deal. She's so disarming in her directness.
She's just a very warm person, she is, and she's lovely. She makes me laugh a good 6-7 times a day.
And she's just a drama nerd who has grown up in the spotlight.
Let's take a close-up on Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway was born on November 12, 1982, in Brooklyn, New York, to Gerald Hathaway, a lawyer, and Kate Macaulay Hathaway, an actress.
Though we all know her as Anne Hathaway, her close friends and family have always called her Annie all of her life, even to this day. She says the only person in her personal life that calls her Anne is her mother, and that's only when she's angry at her.
Raised in Millburn, New Jersey, Anne Hathaway demonstrated an early passion for theater and arts. She attended Millburn High School to get involved in the school productions.
A lot of big movie stars were sort of screw-ups when they were in high school. Not Anne Hathaway. She was a very good student, and she was also very into performing. Anne loved growing up in New Jersey. She loved being involved in choir and plays and all the arts, but there was a part of her that always longed for the lights of Manhattan. She would be thinking, why am I not in New York City? And now that's where Anne and her family make their home.
When Anne Hathaway was 15, she was in a Better Homes and Gardens Realty commercial. If I had seen it back then, I would have immediately just bought a house. Like, she's good.
Anne's enthusiasm for acting led her to pursue a degree in English and Women's Studies at Vassar College. During her college years, she also studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts.
She was the first and only teenager to get into the esteemed Barrow Group for acting, and she was also an accomplished singer. She was part of a high school honors choir who got to perform at Carnegie Hall. In fact, just a couple of days after that big concert at Carnegie Hall, she booked her first TV job on the show Get Real. She later transferred to New York University, but she didn't end up getting her degree. Her career took off and she just got too busy, but she'd like to go back someday and get that degree, but it's not make or break for her. She said that college for her was about opening her mind. She said that was the time when she learned how to think for herself.
Assured college graduate beginning the greatest journey of her life.
Missing her first college semester to film her big screen debut, Anne gained widespread recognition for her role in The Princess Diaries in 2001 as a young girl who discovers she's a member of royalty, opposite Julie Andrews.
Anne Hathaway was a total unknown when she auditioned for The Princess Diaries, and the director, Gary Marshall, was considering better-known actors at the time, like Liv Tyler, but he showed the audition tapes to his granddaughters, and they picked Anne because they thought Anne had the best princess hair. And the director, Gary Marshall, actually described her to Variety magazine as a cross between Julia Roberts, Audrey Hepburn, and Judy Garland.
I watched her grow from a 19-year-old girl running in Princess Diaries 1 who didn't know too much what was going on to a 22-year-old girl in Princess Diaries 2 that knew everything going on.
Anne Hathaway is not scared of hard work, and so for a role where she plays like a princess, she's still taking rock climbing lessons. Like, she's committed. The filming of Princess Diaries was hilarious for everyone on set because it is peppered with legitimate accidents. In the movie, the character wears glass slippers. In real life, Anne Hathaway broke them.
When you laugh in the middle of a take, it's called corpsing, and I think I did it at least once a day. And it's a really fun experience when you kind of make a film and you just spend your day giggling through it.
Her character was a klutz, and Anne Hathaway actually got the role because she too was klutzy. The legend goes she was at the audition and somehow managed to fall out of a chair, and Gary Marshall goes, yeah, that's Mia, absolutely. The character like slips and falls and is all over the place in that film, and that's just Anne Hathaway. Early in her career, Anne Hathaway really had that princess look, you know, princess eyes and just that sweet innocence about her. And so she was also cast in Ella Enchanted. That's a movie where Ella be singing just all the time. You know that she was so excited to just sing in a movie, the whole movie, and that's just Anne Hathaway.
As she first started to become famous, Anne had this sort of good girl image. She didn't get involved in the party scene. She was never in the tabloids doing drugs or getting drunk or going out to clubs. She just wanted to perform.
After a few years of starring in family-friendly movies, Anne started to take on more adult roles to avoid being typecast.
Early on in Hollywood, people really started to notice that Anne Hathaway had been in funny comedies that were geared towards younger audiences, but she had real acting chops.
One of my favorite things about storytelling right now is just the way we don't have to be so committed to genres. And so it used to be that if you were in a romantic genre, it meant it was pure escapism, it was light and fluffy. There's really no having the light without the dark, and the two, when the storytelling's good, the two can mix together beautifully.
So in 2005, Ang Lee cast her in Brokeback Mountain.
In the mid-2000s, Anne Hathaway made 2 movies back-to-back that were a real departure for her, Havoc and Brokeback Mountain. Both of them had more adult themes and storylines. She did nudity in both of the movies, and they really did change the way people perceived her in the industry. Havoc kind of came and went, but Brokeback Mountain, that changed the game for her completely.
Anne Hathaway was cast in the role of Lorraine, the wife of Jake Gyllenhaal's character. The movie, directed by Ang Lee, depicts his emotional relationship with another married man, Innes, played by Heath Ledger.
Everyone kind of had their doubts about whether or not this chick from the Princess Diaries could really pull off a role like this. At that time in history, gay movies had really only been indie films. They were for very small, specific audiences, and they definitely weren't being made by bigger studios. Brokeback Mountain was absolutely monumental in the quest to make cinema for everyone. The only weird part about Anne Hathaway's audition for Brokeback Mountain is that she had to do it while she was filming Princess Diaries 2, and she literally came in costume.
And does the audition for this really, not glamorous character in Brokeback Mountain, but she gets the part, even in her princess makeup.
Ang Lee had no idea who Anne Hathaway really was, and she came in and blew him away with her audition. And she took dressage lessons. She really got to know horses and become comfortable around them because she knew that it was really important for this movie to come off as real as possible.
It's a glamour industry.
In 2006, Anne Hathaway played a prominent role alongside Meryl Streep and Emily Blunt in the widely acclaimed and commercially successful movie, The Devil Wears Prada, based on Lauren Weisberger's novel.
It's impossible to imagine anyone else in the role of Andy in The Devil Wears Prada, but there were actually a lot of big names that were offered that role ahead of Anne. Anne said that she was the 9th choice for the role of Andy.
Initially, the story goes that nobody wanted Anne Hathaway for Devil Wears Prada, and that they thought the role of Andy should go to somebody else who was more famous, because up against Meryl Streep, you can't have a weak performer.
She wasn't that high on the studio's list, but after Meryl Streep, who was already attached to the movie, saw Anne's work in Brokeback Mountain, she called the studio.
Annie is divine. She's like the real deal. She's so straightforward and disarming in her directness. And on camera, that's so endearing, and she's a lustrous presence. I loved working with her.
When Meryl Streep speaks up for you, I think that speaks volumes about Anne Hathaway's ability.
Meryl was cast before I was, and when I found out she was doing it, it just made me all the more hungry to be able to do Andy. She's exactly the way you expect. She's brilliant.
Apparently on the first day, Meryl Streep went up to Anne Hathaway and said, "I'm so happy to be working with you. I think you're perfect for this role." And then Meryl Streep turned to her and said, "That's the last nice thing I'm going to say to you." Because then, of course, she turned into Miranda Priestley, the devil in The Devil Wears Prada.
She's one tough cookie, a workaholic. She's someone who wields a tremendous amount of power and knows it and isn't afraid to wield it.
Anne Hathaway and Emily Blunt played rivals in the movie The Devil Wears Prada, but they actually became very close friends on the film.
Annie is just a dream, and it's a challenge to play someone who's geeky and so completely wrong for a job, but she's also managed to bring a lot of intelligence to it because she's a really smart girl, and funny, as like we've laughed a lot, and just the moment we met each other, we knew we were going to have a laugh on this.
I can't talk like that anymore.
So in about 2007, audiences had figured out that Anne Hathaway was a princess, but she was also a really good actor. And she went back to period pieces in Becoming Jane. And she played Jane Austen.
I was completely intimidated by everyone, pretty much on this job. But I couldn't have asked for a warmer, more supportive, talented cast.
Yeah, maybe.
And then once you get past the director.
She worked very hard to get the British accent, and she didn't want to lose it. So during breaks, lunchtime, anytime in between the set, she kept speaking in that British accent.
I suppose what impressed me was the way that she was prepared to delve into the part very deeply, but to do all the research on the manners and the decorum of the time, which is so important. Learning how to do the dances, learning the piano, and obviously doing the accent. They don't do it properly, so it's a lot of pressure on her, and I think she was aware of that.
I don't get it. He was dead.
I will say this, he is not a quitter.
Next, Anne learned martial arts to portray a spy in 2008 in Peter Segal's movie Get Smart.
The one thing that Anne Hathaway hadn't done was like a straight action movie. And so Get Smart was being remade from being an incredibly popular TV series into a movie with Steve Carell. They needed a strong performer that could be serious, be a spy, handle the physical work, but also just be really charming and fun. So rumor has it that Anne Hathaway was doing so much physical stuff in Get Smart that she ended up with 15 stitches. She rolls her sleeves up, she does the job, the commitment level is off the charts.
Anne next changed gears, leading a drama as a young woman who, having completed drug rehabilitation, returns home for her sister's wedding.
The same year that Anne Hathaway did Get Smart, she was in a really different, smaller indie film called Rachel Getting Married, where she was playing an incredibly troubled young woman. This is like everyone's worst nightmare, where your family is a little much, and so are you, and you're all together in this confined space under a lot of pressure. And the results are so memorable. This is by far one of Anne Hathaway's best roles. I think that she really flourishes with characters that are so complicated. Her own inner complicatedness is reflected in characters like Rachel.
For her performance, Anne earned her first Golden Globes and Oscar nominations for Best Actress.
One of us decides we shouldn't make any concrete plans.
Anne Hathaway is always swinging back and forth in her movies from like serious to period piece to like chick flick, like Bride Wars, which is like a really contemptible storyline about two women who are not supporting other women and they just want to get married. And she and Kate Hudson are terrible to each other in this movie.
I'd never actually been sent a script that had two females at the center of it. I was thinking back to the last time I saw a script like, a movie like that was good, couldn't think of it. So I immediately just said, this is one to hang on to, if only for that, because who knows, sadly, if that's ever gonna rise again for me.
The main reason that I wanted to do this movie was I thought it would be great fun to work with Kate Hudson and Anne Hathaway, both of whom I think are extremely talented and have tremendous screen presence, and it's been great.
In 2010, Anne starred in Gary Marshall's ensemble romantic comedy and commercial success, Valentine's Day. She then ventured into fantasy in Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, reprising her role in 2016's Alice Through the Looking Glass, alongside Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter.
So allegedly, when Anne Hathaway was called for Alice in Wonderland by the great Tim Burton, they wanted her for Alice, but she actually asked if she could read for the White Queen. She was like, Alice doesn't really interest me that much. I'm much more interested in this character not a lot of people really know about. It's not the most popular character, but that's one that I can really sink my teeth into and create for the first time for a lot of audiences. She totally did it. It was a really good choice.
If anything could bring the hatchet back, it would be seeing you again.
One of the things that I was excited about exploring with my character in this one was in the first film, she talks a lot about this kindness vow that she's taken, that she cannot harm another living creature. In this film, you discover why she had to take the kindness vow. Sort of a large part of her persona, who she is now and what she represents, is in reaction to her sister, and that her taking the kindness vow was sort of a political maneuver.
Then, Anne reunited with Jake Gyllenhaal in Edward Zwick's romantic comedy drama, Love and Other Drugs.
In Love and Other Drugs, Anne Hathaway plays a character with Parkinson's, and in order to prepare for the role and give it the kind of gravitas that it deserved, she actually spent a lot of time with a woman also diagnosed with Parkinson's, which just speaks to how seriously she takes her roles.
The movie Love and Other Drugs required nudity from Anne Hathaway, and she felt it was important to the story, and so she was fine with it, had no moral problem, and so she was all in on it. And in fact, in one scene, she shows up to Jake Gyllenhaal's apartment, and she has a trench coat on and nothing else. And she did it. She was like, boom, here I am, boom. And then afterwards, she found out, oh, that's just a rehearsal. We weren't rolling. So she got to do it all over again. Anne was okay doing the nudity in Love and Other Drugs because the director promised her that she could take out anything she didn't like and watch the movie, and there was only one 6-second shot that she asked to have removed, and the director obliged.
Pleasure to meet you. Emma, you'll join us for tea, yes?
In 2011, Anne Hathaway showcased her versatility by starring in another romantic drama, One Day, lending her voice to the animated film Rio, where she brought the character Jewel to life, before portraying an immensely iconic character.
Dark Knight Rises is by far Anne Hathaway's highest grossing film of all time. So they said, we've cast Anne Hathaway as Selina Kyle. The role that's been played by the great Julie Newmar, the incredible Halle Berry, Michelle Pfeiffer, like some of the most iconic presentations of a character are Catwoman. And I think that people had their doubts. But when Anne Hathaway takes on a role like that, she was really undergoing a huge physical change, and she was really focused on the way that she moved so that she could really embody this character who had an amazing amount of confidence.
After she did her audition, she was kind of a nervous wreck, and her agent calls her and he says, I've got good news. And she's like, I'm Catwoman, I'm Catwoman, I'm Catwoman. He goes, no, that's not the good news. That's not the good news. They want you to host the Oscars. So she got a little ahead of herself, but eventually the agent did call back and say that she did get cast as Catwoman.
It just seemed like it couldn't possibly happen. I mean, I'd loved the character since I was a little girl, and it just didn't seem possible that it would be a reality in my life. And so then when I did get it, and then I went to set, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had working on a movie.
And Anne is such a talented actor. She's also a great performer, if you like. She's got those two sides, so she can portray the interior life of the character with great authenticity and relatability. But she can also be very expressive and inhabit a larger-than-life character, and obviously Selina, Catwoman, she's both those things, and Anne brings it together really beautifully.
She's an awesome woman.
Yeah. And absolutely ideal for Catwoman, you know.
In 2011, Anne Hathaway hosted the Oscars with James Franco. Remember that? It was such an odd couple and such an odd pairing, but she came off great, and she even got an Emmy Award nomination for hosting the Oscars.
Even though it didn't hit the bullseye, she was the youngest person to ever have hosted the award. And I think that really is representative of her whole life.
On the path of an unstoppable success, Anne's consecration occurred in 2012 when she portrayed a prostitute dying of tuberculosis in Tom Hooper's Les Misérables. For this role, she received many awards, including the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress.
Anne Hathaway was incredibly excited to be given the role of Fantine in Les Misérables.
One of the things that I love about the book, it's an exploration of love in all its profundity, using language that is some of the most beautiful I've ever read, that just ignites your heart, and I know it sounds poetic, but just illuminates your soul.
If you ask Anne when the acting bug bit her, she might say that it was when she was 6 years old. She recalls seeing a production of the musical Les Misérables, and her mother was playing the role of Fantine. Well, cut to 25 years later, Anne plays that same role in the movie of Les Misérables, and she wins the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress.
She really put herself through a lot physically. She refuses to talk about the diet that she went on to lose 25 pounds because she feels like talking about it is a way of condoning it, and she didn't want to put that on anyone in the audience.
It was very scary to go to some of the places I had to go to as this character, but I had so much support, and it just feels like it's my year of too good to be true dreams coming true.
In Les Misérables, Anne's big song is the ballad I Dreamed a Dream. And then when she wins the Oscar, she gets up on stage and her first words were, "You came true." That is so on the nose, but it is so drama geek. It's perfect.
Anne Hathaway really reaped the benefits of her commitment to the role because she's only on screen for less than 30 minutes, and she won an Oscar.
In 2014, Christopher Nolan called on her talents once again to play Matthew McConaughey's teammate in Interstellar.
She loved being in her costume. The only thing is that she wears it open a lot of the time, and they were in Iceland and she got hypothermia. She was in the water so much. She was having such a blast. She needed to really get into the character, as she's known to do on film sets. And so, yeah, the medics had to be called.
My character was so incredible, and we're gonna get to go where and film at the top of what, and everything about it was enticing.
Anne Hathaway can really hold her own in Hollywood up against the heaviest of hitters like Robert De Niro. So when they were in The Intern together, she would come up with things for them to do because their characters were close in the movie, and apparently they learned Tai Chi together.
That's incredible.
In 2016, Anne Hathaway was captivated by the unlikely script of Colossal, which blends monster movies and comedy drama.
Colossal was by far not the biggest movie budget-wise that Anne Hathaway's ever done, but it definitely is one that leaves a huge impression because it was pitched to her like Godzilla meets Lost in Translation. And for someone like Anne Hathaway, she's like, oh my God, tell me everything. So she filmed the movie while she was pregnant in her second trimester. I can't think of many Hollywood performers that would be that committed to their participation in a role, and yet here she was really giving it her all in a super memorable performance.
Sandra Bullock decided to gather bigger-than-life ladies for Ocean's 8. Cast as the Met Gala's co-host, Anne Hathaway made quite an impression, playing alongside Cate Blanchett, Rihanna, and Helena Bonham Carter.
Even after winning the Oscar, Anne continues to rack up the accolades. In May of 2019, she was given her own star on the legendary Hollywood Walk of Fame. Anne also had one of her best roles ever in the Amazon series Modern Love. She played a woman struggling with bipolar disorder, and she did an amazing job. She dived into the research, and she also was able to draw on her own past because she struggled with her own kind of depression when she was a teenager, and it was one of her best screen roles ever.
In 2020, she played the Grand High Witch, plotting to turn children into mice.
When Anne Hathaway filmed the remake of The Witches, once again, filming it while pregnant, had to go through prosthetics, a ton of makeup, and there she was, really scaring the crap out of everybody. That was a very dark take on Roald Dahl's book, and she brought it, and it was haunting. The way that she played the Grand High Witch in The Witches was really inspired by Christopher Lloyd in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and that's probably why her portrayal of that character really got under my skin.
So you're an attorney?
Oh, recovering.
Like a lot of actors these days, Anne is finding that some of the best roles are on television. She recently starred in We Crashed, which is an Apple TV miniseries about the company WeWork.
Jared Leto loves Anne Hathaway. He loves working with her. And I think that it's because she takes her roles so seriously, and she really took the role of Rebecca Newman to new heights.
She's a legend. She's one of the best, a real actor's actor, and she's the perfect partner in crime here.
Yes, I did. I got you.
In 2004, Anne met and became romantically involved with an Italian real estate developer named Raffaele Folieri. She was attracted to him in part because he has a foundation that provides vaccinations for children in poor countries, and that's the cause that's very important to Anne. But unfortunately for Anne, Raffaele got into a bit of legal trouble. He was arrested for wire fraud and money laundering and pleaded guilty for being involved in a Ponzi scheme involving properties owned by the Catholic Church, and left him just a few days before he got arrested. And the whole time was very stressful for Anne because the FBI actually seized her diaries, but she herself was never accused of any wrongdoing. Anne's husband is a man named Adam Schulman. He's a businessman and an actor, and they first met at the Palm Springs Film Festival. They have two dashing sons together, Jack and Jonathan. Anne and Adam were married on September 29, 2012 in a Christian-Jewish midnight ceremony in beautiful Big Sur, California. They had about 100 close friends and family there, and Anne wore a beautiful gown by Valentino, because if it's the Devil Wears Prada girl, there's gotta be a beautiful gown. Anne is also a goodwill ambassador for the United Nations, and when they first reached out to her about becoming a goodwill ambassador, she was flattered and honored and excited, but she wasn't sure what she wanted to advocate for. And then she became pregnant and the answer became obvious. She was going to advocate for children. Another cause that's very important to her is LGBT rights and equality. Her brother is gay, and Anne even left the Catholic Church because of their anti-gay stances. She said, "I can't support a religion that doesn't support my brother." When Anne Hathaway and Adam Schulman got married, they did something really cool. There's always a lot of demand for photographs of celebrity weddings. Well, they decided to sell the photographs to a magazine and donate the proceeds to the cause of marriage equality.
Always eager for new experiences, Anne Hathaway categorically refuses to be pigeonholed to any movie genre.
An incredibly strong actor, really intelligent, ferociously so, and in some ways underrated dramatically.
It's a once in a lifetime. This is not going to happen again. Be really moved by what's happening in the moment, and when you get it right, I mean, it's the greatest feeling in the world.
Highly committed to her craft, Anne Hathaway always seems to perfectly embody her characters, whether that's in a princess dress, cat's ears, or a spacesuit. Who knows what surprises she has for us next? We're sure willing to find out.